Welcome back to the channel, Black is One, where the agenda is to elevate the consciousness of the black race so that we can unite, build, and prosper. Now before I get into the video, I must first apologize for not having uploaded any content in quite a while. I had to take a break to attend to some pressing personal matters, and even though I didn't upload any content all the while, you were on my mind. Black people in Africa, that's all I think about. Well, not all I think about, but mostly what I think about. Anyway, without any further ado, let me get into this video. Now, if you have been following the entertainment media, you would know that there is a Netflix series that was released on May 10th about the life of Cleopatra, an Egyptian queen. It's a quote-unquote documentary produced by Jada Pinkett Smith based on the life of Cleopatra. Now, in the past, when documentaries are released, it's just another day, another documentary. So what is so special about this one? Even before this documentary was out, it was fraught with controversy. The controversy is over the fact that the person playing Cleopatra in the documentary is a black woman. And the producers of the documentary are saying that Cleopatra, the historical Cleopatra, was black. So because of that, right now, as you're watching this video, white Egyptians or non-black Egyptians are having a seizure over this documentary. Some have even gone to court to file an injunction to stop the documentary from being shown in Egypt. Some have even gone as far as to make their counter documentary about Cleopatra. Imagine that. But why all this fuss? To understand, you would have to know a little bit about Cleopatra herself and about Egypt. Now, Egypt is in Africa. Many people just know that it is in the quote-unquote Middle East. But part of the Middle East is in Africa. Ancient Egypt is the most magnificent, the most awe-inspiring, most unforgettable civilization in all of antiquity, hands down. It was the pinnacle of advancement in education, spirituality, politics, culture, science, art, medicine, architecture, philosophy, and so on in the ancient world. And all this was black achievement, and everyone in the ancient world knew it. The Greeks admired Egypt. Their civilization was modeled off of Egyptian civilization. In fact, the word Egypt is not an African word. It is Greek. It means the land of the blacks. The African name for Egypt was Kemet. Now, pretty much like how it is today, where everyone from everywhere want to cheat the Africans out of their birthright, their abundant gold and silver and copper and manganese and tin and rubber, you name it. For thousands of years, Egypt, Kemet, because of her larger-than-life achievement, has been the scene of many invasions by other races and other nations. When they talk about the Phoenicians, the Assyrians, the Hyksos, the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, the Arabs, and so on and so forth. Egypt, in all that time, in those thousands of years, managed to stave off all those invasions, many times captured by enemy forces and then recaptured by the natives. But this video is not about the numerous invasions of Egypt. So, to cut a long story short, in the early centuries BC, Egypt fell under the control of the Greeks under a man by the name of Alexander. Now, I want to just give you a minute, I'm coming to Cleopatra, but I just give you a little backstory for you to understand why all this fuss over a little documentary that on a normal day would be just another normal thing. So we're in the year 305 BC. After Alexander would have died, Egypt came under the control of one of Alexander's general by the name of Ptolemy I, Sota. And there began the 275-year dynasty of the Ptolemaic family. Foreigners on the pharaoh's throne. Now, Here is where Cleopatra comes in. She was the last Ptolemaic ruler, the last ruler from the Ptolemaic family. She was the daughter of Ptolemy the 12th. Point to note, in 305 BC, when these outsiders, the Ptolemaic rulers, were reigning in Egypt or took over Egypt, all the pyramids were already built. Let's state that. Let's get that out of the way. All of the great tombs were built. The hieroglyphics were already written. Things like mummification and all these things, the whole 9 yards of the things that, for which Egypt is known and envied. All these things were already there. So no foreign ruler built anything in classical Egypt. Let's get that out of the way. Now, there are said to be many Cleopatras, but the one that is famous, the one about which this Netflix series is being made, is the 7th one, Cleopatra the 7th. Now, in my personal opinion, I doubt that Cleopatra was black. Her father's race is taken to be white because he was Greek, Ptolemy the 12th. Her mother is said to be unknown, and because of that there is a suspicion that she was black. Now, if her father was in fact white and her mother was black, that would make her mixed race. But that to me is pure suppose and maybe and probably and highly likely, but nothing concrete. So I'm not going to ride with that train. I'm not going to stick my neck out to say that Cleopatra was black or white. To me it's a 50-50. She is Egypt's favorite queen to the West and to Hollywood because she was likely European or of European features, and she was the queen during the time when the white man was on the throne of Egypt. A lot has been made of her, love triangle with Mark Antony, a Roman general, and Octavia, Mark Antony's legitimate wife. A lot has been made about her intimacy with no less a person than Julius Caesar himself, with whom she had a son. A lot has also been made about her supposed intelligence and her ability to speak several languages and so on. In Hollywood and in the West, she's painted as this resilient, wise, compassionate, strong-headed queen who brought about peace between Greece and Rome. This is Hollywood's favorite queen in a nutshell. And those events that I talk about took place more than 2,000 years ago. So why would present-day non-black Egyptians have a problem with her being presented as black? Well, believe it or not, the non-black Egyptians, are claiming that they were the ancient builders of Egypt. That is what they believe, and that is what they teach their kids. So the idea that the last queen of ancient Egypt, being black, interferes with their narrative. It interferes with the facts that ancient Egypt was black. They feel as if they are sinking and they have nothing to hold on to. You see, the present day quote-unquote rulers, the ruling class in Egypt, are white Arabs. You could classify them as Ptolemaic rulers because they are not legitimate, in the sense that their forefathers were invaders. They took the throne in the land of the blacks by violence. This great ready-made civilization that they conquered was so splendid that they have tried for centuries to take credit for it. They have supported and promoted a false narrative that ancient Egypt was not built by black people. They have even gone on to say that it was built by aliens. It was built by anyone and anything but the true builders, black people. Last year, Kevin Hart said that the rulers of Egypt were black people, and there was a frenzy in Egypt. His tour was cancelled. They claimed that the cancellation was due to logistic problems, but we have our suspicions. Now back to Cleopatra. Given who she was, a Ptolemaic queen, heavily marketed by the West and Hollywood, you can understand why the present day Egyptians would hold her up as a heroine. And given how desperate they are to identify with some of the glory days of Egypt, you can understand why they would be upset that Cleopatra is being casted as a black woman. You know, it is important for Cleopatra to be white because the present day ruling class of Egypt believed that a white Cleopatra give them some kind of connection, some kind of ownership, some kind of claim to Egypt's glorious past. It is that simple. That's what I'm trying to say. They feel as though Jada and Netflix are taking away their one point of contact, their one claim, their one link, albeit very weak, to ancient Egypt. They know that they have no claims to Queen Tai or Nefertiti or Queen Amos or Nefertari or Queen Mentuhotep, Ahotep, all of whom were black Egyptian queens. They have tried to use their movies to claim them by casting Nefertiti especially as white. But the evidence for the pre-Cleopatra, the pre-Ptolemaic queens being black is too overwhelming. Cleopatra, on the other hand, is 50-50. The evidence is not conclusive. There's a gray area, so they have stepped in to claim that gray space. Now, what are my thoughts on this whole saga? As I said before, I don't think that Cleopatra was black. She might have been. I don't know for sure, you know. At a minimum, she may have been mixed race. But she being black, I doubt it. Cleopatra the 7th, eventually committed suicide with her lover, Mark Antony. Mark Antony lost a war to Augustus from Rome, a war partially funded by Cleopatra. After that, they killed themselves together. I don't know what you want to do with that information, but that is that. Another thing is that I think between Jada and Netflix, this whole documentary is an act of manipulation. I believe that they know that this would be a triggering subject, so they put out this controversial content for that very reason, to trigger people. I could be wrong. Obviously, I can't read people's minds and their motives, but that's how it seems to me. To me, this can also injure the black consciousness and the black awakening that is currently taking place. How is that, you might ask? Let's say that black people jump on this and start defending and owning and promoting the blackness of Cleopatra. And sometime in the future, it turns out that she was in fact white. We would lose credibility. We would not be seen as a race of people trying to correct the whitewashing of our history, but rather would be seen as a desperate people who are willing to blackwash white people's history to elevate our own self-esteem. Now, with that said, if Jada and Netflix mean black people any good, why are they trying to make a documentary on a Ptolemaic queen whose racial identity is questionable? Why not do a documentary on Queen Hatshepsut or Queen Tai or Queen Nefertiti or Nefertari? You know, known black queens of Egypt. Or Queen Candace of Ethiopia, who was said to have fended off the invading forces of Alexander. Why not make a documentary about Queen Nzinga of Angola? These are more formidable queens in African history, who we are sure were black people, whose stories and legacies would have a more important and more potent impact on the psyche of black people. Why not make a documentary on those people? Netflix is part of the white establishment. And the white establishment has never done anything for black people in good faith. There is always some sinister ulterior motive. This to me is more of a distraction from more liberating and elevating historical content. One of the other main takeaways from this whole story, this whole saga, is I want us to see how important race is to other races. As long as things are in their favor, other races will pretend as if race is not a thing. They will take comfort in that stance that even some naive black people have taken, to say that race doesn't matter. That is all good and well, you know. And they will accept that argument as long as things remain in such a way that they are not affected. But as soon as one character of a movie or documentary that they believe to be of their race is portrayed as another race or as black, all of a sudden race matters. They start to cancel show, they start to give off a tantrum, they start to seek injunction to block documentary from being shown in their country. Now if race doesn't matter, why do they care that Cleopatra is represented as black? The truth is that race does matter, but they don't want it to matter to us. All the movies about ancient Egypt have been casted by either European whites or white Arab looking actors, knowing very well that ancient Egyptians were indisputably black people. Why didn't the Egyptians who are having a fit now, why didn't they object to these movies not using black people? The answer is simple. Because they benefit from the false narratives and fake history. Cleopatra, even if she was not black, was not an Arab. Nevertheless, Arabs, white Arabs, are having a tantrum over her depiction as black. That is because white Arabs, like white Europeans, have a vested interest in the subjugation of the black race. They are one link. I want to pay attention to these things in the black people. All I can tell you, don't lose any night rest over Cleopatra on Netflix. Let us tell our own stories. Let us research our own past. Let us teach our own people. We can't rely on their books and movies and lectures and documentaries to tell us about us. We should be as protective and defensive about our history and our story, our race, our culture, and how we are portrayed in the media. We should be as protective and defensive as they are. The way they are reacting should be a cue for those who haven't yet started to take an interest in the history of ancient Egypt, to take an interest in the debate as to whether or not it was a black civilization. I can assure you, you would never be the same person after going on that journey. Remember to share the content. Leave me a comment. Like the video if you like the video. Black is one. Live the revolution.